Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that gets into the weeds of big ideas so you come away, well, genuinely understanding them. Today, we're tackling something you hear a lot, maybe even from scientists you really admire. It's this idea that science, just does its thing, completely separate from philosophy, or maybe even above it. You definitely hear brilliant people saying, look, philosophy, it's just not really relevant to the actual work, the discoveries, but what if that's not just wrong, but actually kind of risky for science itself? That's where we're going today, exploring a really powerful counter-argument from John Norton, who's both a philosopher and a physicist. His point, ignoring philosophy doesn't make it go away. Instead, it can leave science kind of stuck with old, maybe even incoherent ideas without realizing it.
Exactly. And that's our mission for you in this deep dive. We're going to unpack Norton's argument piece by piece. We want to show you why these philosophical frameworks, they aren't just like optional extras for scientists. They're actually baked right into the core of scientific thinking. And honestly, there are some surprising insights, even practical benefits that you might never have thought about. It's quite a connection.
Okay, let's get into it. So this claim you hear from physicists, it's almost a bit ironic, isn't it? We just do science, like they actively avoid philosophy. Some even seem proud of it, right? Like it shows how empirical they are.
Right, and that's exactly Norton's jumping off point. That very statement, I just do science, is, well, it's itself a philosophical stance, and often it's one they haven't really examined. Think about it for a second. When physicists wrestle with really basic questions like, what actually counts as good evidence? Or how do we judge if a theory is, good? Is it elegance? Predictive power? What even is reality? Are our theories describing it or just useful tools? Is nature fundamentally uniform everywhere? Those are all philosophical questions deep down. Even if you phrase them scientifically, the roots are in philosophy, assumptions about knowledge, about existence.
Yeah. That makes me think about that critique aimed at someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson. His view, or at least the one often attributed to him, that philosophy needs to be useful to science to have any value. What's the counter to that, philosophically speaking?
Norton has a great analogy for this. He basically says, look, the philosophy of physics, it sets its own benchmarks for success. It's its own field. It doesn't need science's stamp of approval to be valid. His example is ornithology, the study of birds. Does ornithology need birds to, sign off on its research papers to be considered good science?
No, obviously not. You wouldn't ask a robin its opinion on migration modeling.
Exactly. So judging philosophy only by whether it directly helps build the next experiment, well, it kind of misses the whole point of what philosophy is trying to do. It's digging at the foundations, the assumptions, the logic, not necessarily engineering the next gadget.
Okay, I get the foundational part, sort of
Yeah.
under the surface, shaping the questions. But if it's that deeply embedded, surely it does more than just sit there, right? Has philosophy actually, rolled up its sleeves and actively helped physics move forward? Because that's the usual pushback, isn't it? Show me the results.
Oh, absolutely it has. And the sources we looked at point to some really tangible examples. It's not just abstract. For instance, specific arguments that came up within loop quantum gravity.
That's one of the contenders for a theory of everything, right? Trying to link gravity and quantum mechanics.
Precisely. Arguments from that field were actually used to critique string theory, its main rival, pushing for more clarity, more rigor on both sides. That's philosophy in action, shaping the debate. And John Norton himself, his philosophical work on things like covariance principles, basically how laws look the same no matter how you're moving. That work has been cited in physics papers. It influenced the technical discussion. And here's another one, maybe a bit more subtle. Landauer's principle. It's about the energy cost of erasing information.
Okay.
Well, philosophical critiques of how that principle was being understood and applied actually forced physicists to re-examine it, leading to deeper physical insights. And then there are huge examples, like understanding decoherence.
How quantum weirdness fades into our everyday classical world.
Exactly. And grasping the implications of Bell's theorem, which fundamentally challenges our basic intuitions about reality and locality. In both those areas, philosophers played a significant role, working with physicists to clarify incredibly complex, counterintuitive ideas. It wasn't just physicists figuring it out alone. So Norton's broader point here is that actually investing more in philosophy of physics could pay off significantly. He notes that a lot of these really crucial contributions came from people maybe a bit outside the physics mainstream. Fresh eyes, different questions, it shows the practical value.
Okay, that paints a clearer picture of the positive contributions. But what about the flip side? If philosophy is always there, humming in the background, what happens when a scientist, maybe unknowingly, bases their ideas on, let's say, shaky philosophical ground? I have to admit that it from bit idea always sounded so, well, profound. The John Wheeler's idea, right? Reality is made of information.
Yeah.
You're saying Norton sees this as problematic, like a philosophical misstep. Help me get my head around why.
Yeah, this is a really key distinction Norton makes. He talks about professional philosophy versus what he calls coffee table philosophy.
It's a coffee table philosophy.
Right. Professional philosophy, for him, is about rigorous analysis. It's about carefully defining terms, logical consistency, really dissecting complex ideas. Coffee table philosophy. That's more about catchy slogans, things that sound deep and meaningful, but when you actually poke at them, they might collapse or turn out to be kind of empty.
And it from bit falls into the coffee table category for him.
Pretty much, yes. Look, using information theory as a tool in physics, totally fine. Incredibly useful, actually. We describe systems using information concepts all the time. But claiming that information is the actual stuff reality is made of, the fundamental substance, that's where Norton says, hold on, that's a category error. It's nonsensical from a rigorous philosophical perspective. It's like confusing the description of a thing with the thing itself. The map isn't the territory, right?
Okay, so the description is useful, but don't mistake it for the underlying reality.
Exactly. And it raises that question. Are we genuinely understanding something deeper, or are we just repeating a cool-sounding phrase that doesn't actually stand up to scrutiny? And here's a killer detail, Claude Shannon, the absolute pioneer of information theory.
The father of it, they say.
Right. He explicitly warned against equating his concept of information with thermodynamic entropy. He saw them as different things. And that equation, that very conflation, is kind of the bedrock it from bit rests on. So Shannon himself undermines the slogan's core premise. It really highlights the philosophical slip-up.
Wow, okay. That really reframes it. It's not just what you believe, but how carefully you've examined why you believe it. So this distinction then between just having philosophical assumptions, because I guess we all do, right, and actively doing philosophy, how do you tell the difference in practice?
Yeah, it's exactly that. Implicit assumptions versus explicit engagement. Everyone operates with assumptions. Maybe you lean towards instrumentalism, thinking theories are just useful prediction tools, not true pictures of reality.
Or empiricism, believing all real knowledge has to come from experience, from observation.
Right. Just having those views isn't the same as doing philosophy. Doing philosophy means stepping back. It means consciously examining those assumptions. Asking, is this view coherent? What are its limits? Are there better alternatives? It's a critical, systematic process.
Okay, so it's like moving from just having a belief to analyzing the belief itself.
Norton uses this brilliant analogy. He says it's like the difference between just speaking English fluently and actually studying linguistics.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Most physicists, in their day-to-day work, they speak philosophy. They make judgments based on philosophical criteria, what's good evidence, what makes a theory compelling, what they think reality is like. They operate with these implicit philosophical views all the time, but many never formally study it, meaning they don't necessarily step back and analyze the underlying structure of their own reasoning, their own philosophical grammar.
They're fluid speakers, but they don't necessarily know the grammatical rules they're instinctively following.
Exactly. They might be using outdated or even contradictory rules without realizing it because they haven't examined the structure itself.
That analogy really works. It clarifies that distinction perfectly.
Yeah.
And speaking of unexamined assumptions in history, there's this amazing historical twist about the word empiricism itself, isn't there? It kind of drives home how deep these philosophical roots go, even for terms scientists use casually.
Oh, it's a fantastic bit of history and deeply ironic. So empiricism, this badge of honor, for many scientists today, its origins trace back to this ancient medical sect from the Hellenistic period, the empirics.
Okay, an old medical group.
Right. But by the 1700s or so, they were often looked down upon, even called quacks by some. Why? Because they were seen as just relying on observation and trial and error. This seemed to work last time, without any real understanding of underlying causes, without a theoretical framework, just pure unguided experience.
So the original empiricists were seen as not very rigorous.
By many, yes. So the irony is, if you proudly declare yourself an empiricist today, while also loudly rejecting philosophy, you're actually adopting a label that comes directly from a specific historical philosophical tradition, one that, for a time, was even associated with a lack of deep understanding. It just perfectly highlights Norton's whole point. You can't escape philosophy. Even the words you use to reject it are soaked in it. These unexamined frameworks are always there.
That is quite the twist. So wrapping this all up, what's the big picture here from our deep dive? It seems the core message is pretty clear. Philosophy isn't this optional add-on for physics. It's not something you do in your armchair after the real work is done. It seems like it's baked right into the foundations. It's fundamental. And trying to ignore it doesn't make it vanish. It just means, as Norton warns, you might be letting bad or outdated philosophies operate unchecked. You don't even know they're influencing you.
Absolutely. And we've seen clear examples where philosophy of physics hasn't just been foundational, but has offered real, concrete help. It's helped clarify tricky concepts, critique theories, push science forward in tangible ways, and it serves as that crucial warning, doesn't it? Be careful not to mistake those catchy slogans, those coffee table ideas, for actual deep understanding of reality, for genuine ontology. Just because something sounds good doesn't mean it holds up philosophically. We need that rigor.
Definitely. And maybe here's a final thought for you listening to take away and chew on. If even physics, arguably one of our most rigorous, fact-driven pursuits, relies so heavily on these often invisible philosophical underpinnings, well, what other parts of our lives could benefit from a similar checkup? Where else might we be operating on unexamined assumptions? In our work, our relationships, how we understand the news. Thinking about that, about making our own implicit assumptions explicit. How might that change how you approach complex problems or make decisions? Something to think about. We hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on how science, philosophy, and reality itself might be intertwined.